First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they weren't talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got
that. Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. You got good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
the
an
Guyanese
erratic
Mickey
detective, is Mickey Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? No, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Kingdom, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hello there. Welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show. Our co-host Akash Persaud was unable to make it. Tonight is one of a different program. It's within what we set out to do, but it's kind of different because of the nature of our guests. These are very, very young lawyers who have 40 more years, if they stay in law, ahead of them. Two lawyers this evening discuss law in general, the legal system in Guyana in general, and the implications of all of that. Our guest this evening is to my immediate left, Joshua Abdool. Joshua comes from one of the most famous insurance families. I think you must know about the Abdool insurance agencies. And he acquired a new status 3 weeks ago. He got married. So Joshua is now a newly married man, and I'm thinking of writing a book on marriage because I've spent 46 years in marriage, and I wonder if he can ask his father if he can finance it, and I will give him a complimentary copy. To Joshua's left is Donavon Rangiah. Now, do you know why his first name is Donavon? His father named him after the Olympic Canadian sprinter Donavon Bailey, and that's how we got the name Donavon. So Donavon, I was wondering, when you in Canada, you ever try to look him up and say, look, you know, my father named me after you? He's very famous in Canada. I'm sure if you go on his Facebook page, you'll see him. When next you going to Canada?
I don't know, Freddie. I don't know, but I've never tried to look them up at all.
But you've been to Canada in the past few years?
I have not.
So you're going, we have a lot of viewers, in the diaspora in Canada. If you're listening or looking at this program, my cell phone is 614-5927. Please contact me and we can discuss about locating Donavon Bailey so he could hook up with the guy, the lawyer in Guyana that is named after him. Gentlemen, the protocol, Joshua, thanks for being here. How is marriage treating you?
Oh, it's great. Nothing has changed, which is the greatest thing of all.
So your father's going to finance that book for me?
Sure thing.
Donavon Bailey Rangiah.
All right.
Good. So we go alphabetically. Joshua, if an interviewer was to ask you, say something on your mind about the law in Guyana that you're not happy with, what would that be?
Well, I'm glad previously you mentioned I'm newly married 3 weeks. So what's been on my mind and what's I've come across a lot in my practice is a lot of people looking to get a divorce. And currently in Guyana, we're still laboring under a very old system where divorce is based on matrimonial fault.
Like you have to cite a fault.
Right, so it's
an egregious fault, desertion,
adultery, cruelty, and it becomes an acrimonious process. Two people can't just decide, look, this is not working out.
Yeah, fine.
Right.
That's human nature. That's how humans are.
Right.
Some people just get tired and say, let's go away, and both of them say, fine.
Right. Well, that option is not open to them, unfortunately. So when you're trying to get a divorce, you have to file a petition, and you have to go on one of the grounds. You have to not allege a matrimonial offense. And generally speaking, there's 3 types. There's adultery, there
desertion.
Is cruelty, and there's malicious desertion. Now, adultery is particularly difficult because when you're claiming adultery, you have to name the alleged adulterer and bring them as part of the proceedings. They might have an answer to that allegation.
Are you serious, man?
Yes. So it is a rare thing.
That's a violation of people's privacy.
It is incredibly acrimonious, as you'd imagine, because if these issues become issues that go to trial, there's a third party involved. It's a long court proceeding. It's traumatizing for parties involved.
It's degenerate. I didn't know. I know that Priya Manik Chan 15 years ago tried to introduce no-fault divorce, but I didn't know you have to produce in court the person's having the affair.
Yes, they would have to have an answer to it. Now, attorneys generally don't go on that ground, and even the ground of cruelty. I mean, to allege cruelty, that's things like serious domestic violence and that kind of thing. Those pleadings have to be put before the respondent, and it is the first instinct is to resist that, to say, no, I haven't done that, I haven't done this. So it creates an environment of
and the press is allowed in court, so the press can report that.
I don't see that press usually get involved. I think the court can remove press, but court documents are public record.
But in the age of social media, if you're a well-known politician or a well-known businessman who leans one side in the political spectrum, your detractors could go on social media and do a lot of...
I do know of circumstances where people's divorce proceedings were peddled around, and it's dirty laundry. But it's not a system that needs to take place. I think this is, in our current climate, Guyanese people, and even the courts, realize that 2 people can and should be able to just say, well, things are not working out. We have issues to deal with. We might have children. We have property. Those are separate issues. We can deal with that legally. But the divorce itself, 2 people should just be allowed to divorce. And I can understand, too, the basis of this fault-based system. I mean, the marriage institution is protected because they view it as valuable, and it was based largely on religion. But times have changed, and people want to be able to get a divorce without acrimony.
I didn't know. I'm in favor of no-fault divorce. Anyone who studies philosophy would know humans are unpredictable. A man and a woman could live, and then they decide because of their philosophical difference. Let's call the judge. Well, I didn't know the person has to be produced in court. That, to my mind, is a violation of the Constitution. But let's go over to the Canadian sprinter, Donavon. Donavon, what is on your mind? If an interviewer asks you as a young lawyer, look, the 2 of you haven't lost your modest features. You've got them over 50 years more in law. Are you guys going to stay in law?
Oh, yeah, I plan to. I definitely. I may transition at some point in time to insurance.
That's where the money is. That's where the money is. So
I don't know about that, but it is a legacy.
the Abdool family, the Abdool dynasty. Donavon, somebody says to you as a young lawyer, what's on your mind about law in Guyana? What was the first thing that would come out to you?
Well, the first thing will come up to my mind is about the inordinate delays in criminal proceedings in Guyana.
Oh
It's a
God,
breach-
people 4-5 years on remand.
There you go. It's a breach of the human right. Right to a hearing within a reasonable time. Simple as that. And that's a human right that is embedded in our constitutions since time immemorial. There was Article 5.1 of our 1961 Constitution, was Article 10.1 of our 1966 Constitution, and now it's Article 144.1 of our Constitution. Now, the reason I say all these dates is that Guyana was far ahead of its time, right, when it inserted those particular provisions, or that provision in our Constitution. The reason I say this is that the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, which was effected, I believe, in 1976, that was the first time that the international community respected that right, and many countries ratified it. We did it in 1961 in our constitutions, and the international community recognized it all the way in 1976. So we were far ahead of our time when it comes to this. Now, when I say criminal proceedings and delays in criminal proceedings, I don't mean magistrate court level alone. I also mean high court level. I also mean appeal court levels.
The
Judiciary in entirety. I mean, some people, I'm just saying hypothetically that some people may be waiting 2 years for their appeals to be heard, criminal appeals to be heard in the appeal courts. I'm just saying hypothetically. Now, we must first start off with this. There is no such thing as an absolute right. No such thing. Every right has to be balanced against public interest and the attainment of justice. So we have to keep that in mind from the onset, because if we don't keep that in mind, it will create problems down the line. Now, I can sit here and talk to you about law all day as it relates to this particular sector, all the way from one of the oldest recorded cases in Guyana about this particular right being breached is in the Queen, Ogle against the Queen. This was since 1968. 1968.
Ogle was a man, somebody's name?
Yes, he was a defendant, and he had a good lawyer. And the lawyer brought an action in the High Court saying that he had delays in his proceedings, and he essentially won that case. Now, I want to go back a little about this. Now, what can be done if you are in remand or there's delays, major inordinate delays in your proceedings? What can be done? Well, the Constitution says we have two forms of redress. Article 153 says that you can approach the High Court, make an application before the High Court, and the judge determines that. Or you can approach the Human Rights Commission, which is Article 156A of our Constitution.
No, we don't have a Human Rights Commission.
Yeah, that's the thing. So my focus today is really in relation to litigation, bringing to the High Court an action saying that these proceedings are taking extremely long. I need some sort of redress. I need some sort of reparation, some sort of compensation. And redress can range from setting aside sentence convictions or reducing sentences. But there's no one-size-fits-all, Freddie. There's none one-size-fits-all. The reason I say this is that Guyana has adopted the English approach on it. Every form of redress has to be tailor-made in accordance with the particular circumstances of the case. Everyone. So it's not like I said, I use the cap here and then use the cap there. It has to be tailor-made. So I can speak to you in great lengths about 5 major cases, but I won't go into great details about them in Guyana. Ogle against the Queen, Sandiford against the DPP, Harry Chan and Singh, Bridgelal against Harry Persaud, and of course, Indojali against the DPP. Right?
Those things took years.
Those things took years, from 1968 to 2019. The development of the law took that long time. And the reason I'm not sure the reason why it took so long time, but I always say this to people. Doctors cure the body. Lawyers cure the social ills of society. Find yourself a good lawyer and you'll be able to get there. So we have adopted, like I said, the English and the Canadian principles on it. The burden of proving whether this individual, this defendant or accused has an inordinate delay in his proceedings. The burden is on the prosecution. It's not on the defendant himself. The Americans have adopted that approach. That's Barker and Wingo's decision in the American Supreme Court. So we have adopted the English and Canadian principles. Now, the test to determine whether there's inordinate delay in criminal proceedings in Guyana is set out clearly in the CCJ by Bridgelal against Harry Persaud. The court has to determine the overall delays, and this is delays from the magistrate's court all the way leading up to the Court of Appeal, depending on the particular circumstances of the case. And that overall delay has to be considered by the court, and if on the face of it the court considers it's inordinate, then the court has to interrogate all the facts and circumstances of the case, listen to the prosecution's justification, and then decide whether or not there's inordinate delay in criminal proceedings in Guyana, or in that particular case. So I will say Bridgelal and Harry Persaud was the spark of the evolution. But it started all the way from 1968.
With Ogle.
With Ogle. Then the major decision in 2019 was Inderjali against the DPP. Now, that particular case now sought to place a balancing act. Now, the court was of the view that there are delays caused by the judiciary, as opposed to delays caused by the prosecution, are weighed less heavily. That was a very important distincting point. And I say this because historically, the reasons for these delays, and I'm saying historically, that's the reason why we traced all the way from 1968 in Ogle to now, are this: lack of magistrates and judges, lack of administrative staff, lack of resources, and also procedural problems. Now, Freddie, I'm not sure how much time I have.
No, you have an hour.
I have an hour.
The show's an hour, yeah.
I have
you have an hour at the expense of Joshua.
Okay, I won't go too long. I won't go too long anymore. But just a little bit more. But this is something I'm passionate about. So that's the reason why I'm going on and on and on. So those historical things, I will just go through them. But as of recently, we've appointed more judges, we've appointed more magistrates, and we are soon to appoint more justices of appeals, which is a good thing. It's a very, very good thing. But one of the concerns that people have is that some of the magistrates who already exist become judges. They take out a position of judges. Some of the magistrates go up to position of commissioner of title. So at the bottom, there might be a little bit of a, more or less magistrates to deal with in the different vicinities. But nonetheless, they're still more than a year ago, nonetheless. So the other thing I want to speak about is the lack of resources, which I don't believe will be a problem in Guyana due to our soon-to-be massive oil wealth coming in. And the third issue is the procedural problems. Now, recently, the government has alleviated one such procedural problem, which is the introduction of the Criminal Law Procedure Paper Committal Act of 2024.
Preliminary inquiry.
Yes, which abolished the preliminary inquiry. Now, people don't realize how important that is, unless you're probably charged for murder. So when an individual is charged for murder, for example, he has to go through the magistrate's court through a preliminary inquiry or a hybrid paper committal. That was before this act was enforced. So the witnesses will have to go into the witness box. The witnesses will have to give their evidence. Magistrate will have to write every single thing down, as per usual. And it takes a very long time. The hybrid paper committal system we had before was Section 671E of the Criminal Law Procedure Act, which was a little less time consuming, in that the statements that the prosecution would rely on will be tendered into evidence, and the lawyer, if the lawyer does represent the individual, if he is represented, he will say, I would like to cross-examine X or Y or Z. And he can also give a no-case submission, saying that there's no case to answer. Now, it's far less timely, but the problem with that is that the individual had to be represented by counsel, attorney at law, for that particular provision to kick in. And it's optional. Some lawyers didn't actually take that route, even though it was a quicker route. But with the introduction of this particular, I just call it Paper Committal Act, just for all intents and purposes, it alleviated, it abolished the whole two systems that we had. It abolished it completely and allowed for a strict paper committal as opposed to a hybrid paper committal. It's a faster process throughout the entire court. And regardless of whether you were represented by attorney at law or not, it applies, because it abolished the previous protocols from which was time immemorial. We call it the preliminary inquiry. We used to call it the long form.
All right.
Because it was very, very long.
I am not going to put you guys in any insidious position when it comes to your job. So I don't want to cite names here and then you have to go in front of these people. But one of the things as a layperson that irritates me in this country, especially my area of being a university lecturer, we have to face every 3 years assessment. And if the assessment goes wrongly, you're out of the system. The head of the army, the head of the police force can be dismissed by the government. The president can dismiss his prime minister. And so you have this accountability system. The president can lose his job in November next year. He can be voted out. It irritates me as a layperson. I don't see it. And I want you to discuss it for me. I don't see any assessment of our judicial officers. I've had bad experience in this country as a long-standing social activist and a long-standing journalist. I've had terrible experience with the judiciary. I think Magistrate Judy Lachman should not be a magistrate. I don't want you to comment on that. I've had bad experience with her. When 3 persons were charged, Kwame McCoy, Jason Abdullah, and Sean Hines for throwing something in my face. That woman in the court looked at me and said, you wrote a column about Hotel California, and recited the whole song in the magistrate court. Justice Navindra Singh in the High Court sued me for libel. And I couldn't get a lawyer. All the lawyers, people I know that I could ask for $1 million tomorrow, said to me, I can't take that case, I will have to go in front of him. You know, the question is, shouldn't there be some system to make these judicial officers accountable? Shouldn't there be a regulation that says a judge can use contempt of court but not sue? I mean, where is the accountability for magistrates and judges? I know it's an area I don't want you to.
A tenuous area.
Yeah, because I've known with Navindra Singh, people, 3 lawyers provided the defense, and Glenn Hanneman from Portugal did my defense. These 3 lawyers said, make sure our name are not mentioned. A judge sues a newspaper columnist, and no lawyer in the country wants to take the case. And I was saved by a judge called Sandra Crucius, who said, we don't want this case to be heard. Because if that case was heard, Hanneman would have crucified a judge on the High Court, because the things we had, you know. So I wanted to raise that with you speaking in general. But when I look at your countenance, I'm afraid I think I want to pass on, because it doesn't look like you'll want to talk about accountability of judges. It doesn't look like you want to. So you want to quickly say something about that, or can we move on? I don't want you to go in front of a magistrate and you on the Freddie Kissoon Show saying magistrates are not accountable. Chase you your client out the court.
I think judicial positions are protected because of what they have to do. But there's meant to be a body that makes recommendations. If that body finds that they've done things that warrant their removal or some sort of disciplinary action. But I don't know of any time in our history that has actually ever occurred. So I can say that's a shame.
Better don't go. Joshua, you go in front of these. Listen, you want to say a few words on that before we move on to...
Well, I would just say that I'm not completely sure about as it relates to accountability about judges. But I won't go into great detail. Actually, I'll stop as where I am. But I have no issue if, Mr. Kissoon, if you were in that position, I would have no difficulty representing you. I have no difficulty with that.
I would not. The thing about this judge, Navindra Singh, which I think the Chancellor should have called him in, is that he didn't give me a chance to apologize. He sued me. Judge Sandra Kusha say, take this matter to mediation. When we went to mediation, Justice Navindra Singh said to the mediator, Tenahusti, we didn't have to be here. All he had to do was apologize. I was never given the opportunity to apologize. As a 35 years in journalism, apology becomes automatic. You see something in the papers and I've been offended and I will expect an apology. I write the thing the next day. He didn't give me a chance to apologize, and he went to the mediator, and this guy has had a problem with the deputy headmistress of Queen's College, this judge. He had a problem with senior counsel, the Silver chauffeur. He had a physical encounter with television owner C.N. Sharma, and no one seemed to at least have a committee to investigate this judge. I don't understand which part of the country you have a judge involved in these public spats, suing a columnist and then giving false misleading information to a court-appointed mediator, and there is no accountability. Some of these magistrates do things that they should not be on the bench. Anyway, I've taken up a lot of your time. What else is on your mind with the law? I want you young guys to enunciate.
Well, I was just going to say, I was going to interject and say that for defamation matters specifically, unfortunately, nothing compels the aggrieved party from accepting an apology. They might get an apology, and that might have the effect of the court reducing the amount that they get. But if they can prove that they've still been damaged, they don't have to accept the apology, more or less. That is defamation. That defamation is an area that's really growing in Guyana, I find. A lot of people don't realize that what they say on social media and so on in writing is subject to defamation.
Sure.
But yeah, that's what I have to say about defamation proceedings.
Well,
You're seeing a lot of them these days.
I don't want to go much into that. Anything on, as we continue, the question of, you want to take up the question of no-fault divorce? You're married, by the way. I know he got married.
No, I'm not married. I'm very single.
Very single, Anna. Soon to be.
I'm not sure. I'm not.
If it's a boy, if your son is a boy, you're gonna name him Donavon?
Donovan Jr. You never know.
Mr. Rangiah says that he's going to be single until he's 50. That's what he told me before.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
He's forever bachelor.
Let me tell you something. There's nothing better in life. I am not homophobic. I don't have any problem with people being homosexual. But there's nothing better in life than to love a woman, let that woman love you, and you dance the night away in her arms and she in your arms. There's nothing better. Donavon, Rangiah, get married, fall in love.
You're a very romantic man. Mr. Kissoon, you're a very romantic man. Someday.
You know what it's like, holding hands and listening to Kishore Kumar or Johnny Mathis on the beach? Or Italian love songs. Josh, traffic.
Yes, traffic. So, there's been a lot of accidents these days. One a particularly egregious one where 18-year-old young woman was
they ran into a crane.
Yeah, horrible. And I want to talk about the laws surrounding traffic and how they can be bolstered, particularly with regard to, you have to get insurance when you're driving a vehicle. And I think insurance and the laws surrounding it play a part in reducing the casualties on our road. Under our current law, Motor Vehicle Insurance Act, Third Parties Act, you have to get insurance, but the policy that you get only has to cover you for $100,000 in the case of damage to property and $125,000 in the case of bodily injury or death. Now, you knock down somebody, $125,000 is going to go nowhere.
Not gonna cover.
It's best you're not covered at all.
I agree.
But the reason I say I'm saying that these limits need to be raised, and I'm not trying to pass extra costs on to the average Guyanese person, because obviously a more extensive policy costs more. But what I'm saying is that on the roadways you have people who own large amounts of buses, all right? So you have owners, they have a whole fleet of buses, and they're operating. Is incredible exposure depending on what drivers they choose to drive for them. And then when they victimize somebody on the road with recklessness, that person doesn't get compensated properly because it's only $125,000 that the policy covers. Now, the insurance companies have a role to play here because when somebody actually gets convicted of offenses in the traffic court, if the insurance company gets hold of that information, they can say, well, look, you represent an increased risk, and you have to pay more premiums based on the increased risk you present. So you raise the policy so that victims...
Getting into insurance here.
I'm sorry, that's my second baby. I guess it's natural. You raise the policy so that victims can get compensated more, because otherwise you have to chase... I believe you're the
legal advisor to your father.
that is correct. So you raise the policies so victims get compensated more, but also insurance companies need to be able to get that information to raise premiums. So it makes it expensive to have bad drivers on the road. Expensive for the bad drivers, expensive for the owners of the bus fleet. So they then, out of financial considerations, operate with more due diligence in hiring the correct people to drive. They might ask drivers to produce a history, for example, of their accidents on the roadways, to ensure that they don't end up costing them a whole set of money to operate the vehicles. The other thing I want to talk about is that since, I think, 2014, we've had a demerit system in court, which says that you get convicted of a traffic violation or offense, you can get demerit points. And once you accumulate enough demerit points, your license gets suspended or possibly even removed or revoked. But that system, even though it's been on the books since 2014, it really hasn't been implemented. I am now hearing
10 years ago it's on the book and it hasn't been implemented.
Right, and it's a good system. I mean, the system always has to have a way to get bad drivers off the road. Because if you sample 10 people and you say, okay, there was 10 motor vehicle offenses committed, you might be not surprised to find that all 10 of the offenses were committed by just about 2. Because bad drivers are the ones who continually commit offenses on the road. You need to get them off the road. So the demerit system is quite ingenious. It's just that it hasn't been implemented. But I do understand, I'm hearing through the grapevine that some young magistrates, newly appointed, are implementing that system and trying to work it into things. Provided that there's a good ability of the court to record that demerit system, and drivers can't get away with it by, I don't know, switching the license book or something like that. It should be a great way to reduce. I mean, the road is a dangerous place in Guyana, so something needs to be done.
Before I go to constitutional reform in Donavon, I always felt that despite the economic limitations of Guyana, it's unknown in the world. I always felt that for a small country with a small population, it has some of the most beautiful women in the world. Do you agree with that?
I agree.
I think.
Are you going to wait until 50, until you're 50 to get married?
I'm joking.
I was just going to say, this is a question for the forever bachelor.
He told you that for true?
No, I'm joking. It was in jest. It was in jest.
I think this small unknown country has some very, very beautiful women. I certainly married one of them. But
me too.
Yeah, you want to show our
you've already-
our viewers if you put the phone on the screen, we can ask the operator to. But then again, that's her privacy.
No. She would be very annoyed about that.
She'd be very
She's also annoyed about the fact, while I'm so grateful for coming on the show, that I'm newlywed and talking about divorce.
How do you know that? She texts you?
No, she didn't.
That
text
must
me.
be a
It might be a little unsettling, though, you know?
But she could be right. There's a Freudian thing in your mind. Look, we have a Constitution Reform Commission. I want to ask both of you, beginning with Donavon, what is the thing that you think that is not in the Constitution that should be in the Constitution? Let's start with
Not in the Constitution,
right.
but should
You,
be the Constitution.
or that you would like to see in the Constitution. The Constitution Reform Commission comes to you, Donavon Rangiah, and say, what suggestions you have for changing this document?
Well, Freddie, that's a difficult one to be impromptu about. I think that's something I really have to think about. I have to sit down, think. People think lawyers know everything right off the bat. But we actually have to sit down. We actually have to think. We have to address our mind state. And at this stage, I can't say for certain this is something that I want to see in the Constitution. I need to think and assess. At least that's my perspective on things. I don't want to give a willy-nilly or a half-hearted or a half attempt. Because otherwise I'll be just doing an injustice and just blowing hot air. And I don't like blowing hot air. My time is very, very important to me. And I don't want to give bad advice or bad, in this case, bad reform advice. So I can't say for certain right now.
Okay, I know one of the things I want to recommend to the Constitution Reform Commission is reforming insurance. They don't like pay when it's time to pay. They don't like pay when it's time to pay. Josh, what the members of the Reform Commission see you passing on the road, and they say, Josh, we're having a session today. Come. What is it you want to see in this?
Oh, that is. I unfortunately have the same answer as my friend. You know,
it's a lawyer's answer.
That is a, but that is a field in itself. You know, there are attorneys completely dedicated to constitutional issues alone. And I frankly haven't dealt with a lot of constitutional issues. What I can tell you for sure is that there probably would be a whole bunch of things if I address my mind to it. But
adjust your mind to it. Adjust your mind.
No,
adjust your mind. We have time.
No,
give me one. Give me one.
That's a tough one to pull out of the box there. Difficult. Do you have something on your mind? Maybe we can.
I just said insurance company.
That was genuine.
They don't like
insurance companies not really mentioned in the Constitution.
I'm joking. Can we move on now to two senior lawyers sat at this table separately. Okay, I know both of you straddle both criminal and civil law.
Oh no, I just do civil.
Oh, you just do civil?
Yes, that's why I was edified by Mr. Rangiah's discussion about undue delay.
Okay.
Because I just practice civil.
You could have undue delay in civil. Listen,
do
you know how many people I run into? What happened to the land dispute in land of Canaan 10 years ago? You get your land now? No, it's still in the court.
Well, this is a good segue to something I wanted to discuss as well. More needs to be done in terms of resources given to the court to administer cases in the civil arena, but probably in both arenas, right? So before I came to Guyana, I worked in Trinidad, right? And I observed, well, they had no money at the time. Yes, as a lawyer, a couple of years I worked in a firm. And when you go to their court, each judge has a dedicated judicial research assistant. That's a young legal practitioner that helps them. And it's pivotal when you hear about, well, we just got some new judges. It's great. But the burden on them, for a judge to sit down, do all the research for his matters, write all the judgments, and have a docket of 100 cases, there's going to be delays, and it's not necessarily the judge's fault. They are overworked. What Trinidad managed to do was set up these extra persons or extra positions that allow them, and they rely on them. It's not to say that these persons substitute their own judgment for the judgment of the court. They assist, and they do a good job in doing so. And that system works better. The administration of justice is generally faster and less burden. But it takes money. The other thing Trinidad does is, well, you know, when they're dealing with costs, which can be a lengthy thing to deal with in court, they have masters, a particular type of judge, you could say, to determine what cost should be, a specialized kind of thing. So it's more efficient, it's more streamlined, but it requires more resources to be injected into the court. I'm happy to hear that logistically, I know we're moving towards e-filing, less paperwork. We're moving towards, well, we haven't really moved away from Zoom since COVID.
To an extent.
Yeah, to an extent. So those are things that make everything more efficient as well, because when you're talking about paper, that's increased cost for the whole system. But more money needs to be injected into the system. They need more money, or else they'll be overburdened again. These new judges, in a matter of no time, will be overburdened, and then we'll be asking for more judges again. We need to create those support positions for them.
But you know, there's I'm coming to the two senior lawyers said here. But you know, there was a complaint recently. I think it's legal that a judge has to hand in all decisions before they retire, and if they don't, the pension is affected. But I heard there was a complaint that judges are not giving their decisions within a specific time, and
I understand that there's a rule about 6 months. You're supposed to make a judgment within 6 months of the trial. I could be wrong, but nobody would dream of enforcing that. I mean, that's quite an acrimonious thing. I mean, imagine complaining, "Look, judge, hand me a decision." But you know, it's as I was saying, it's generally not the judge's fault. There's just too much work on their plate. It's not humanly possible for them to do all of it. A judge can't just produce a judgment willy-nilly. You know, this is something that they have to research and get into detail about and make sure that they're right. And being right is the most important thing. So the system just needs more resources dedicated to it, and I think that problem will be alleviated. Judges want to do their work generally. They want to do their work and they want to get through it. So if they had the proper support, you would see a much faster administration of justice.
okay. Although this is a criminal matter, I'm sure you have some thought in it. Two senior counsels sat here on different occasions, and the issue of Nigel Daramlal accusation came up, in which the young lady said no such thing, Mr. Daramlal did not do A, B, C, D. Ralph Ramkaran on this seat said the DPP should have proceeded, even though the young lady said, look, no, that was not, people said that, no, that didn't happen to me. The AG Annie Nandalal said, what are you going to proceed with? If there is no case to proceed with, no evidence, what are you going to proceed with? What's your take on that as a criminal lawyer?
I agree with the AG as it relates to that. Because what are you going to proceed in? Once you actually, let's just say, you put the gears into motion. You institute, let's just say hypothetically, you put the gears into motion, the individual is charged, all right? The girl now comes, the virtual complainant now comes and says, I have nothing to say in relation to this. I have absolutely nothing to say. Now you've put the gears into motion for no reason. Now what will happen? You've wasted resources that could go somewhere else. At least that's my take on it. If someone says that did not happen, then what are you proceeding with? You're just wasting resources. At least that's my take on it. It's not everybody's take on it, but it's my take.
Okay, now, as a layman, whenever I see this, I say, what the hell? I'm not a lawyer. What is going on here? Almost every day in court, a police prosecutor jumps up and says, Your Worship, we are opposing bail, the prevalence of the offense. But isn't bail denied based on two things? That you will flee the jurisdiction or tamper with witness? How could prevalence of an offense determine whether you should get bail or not?
Well, I think...
And so shouldn't somebody educate these police and prosecutors? And why the magistrate don't say, sir, shut up, know the law, and if you don't know the law, please learn the law. But you can't deny bail because of prevalence of offense.
Well, there is the Bail Act, the new Bail Act, which actually gives a few considerations. I can't list them all out because there's quite a few. Prevalence of the offense is one of them. If he will abscond.
Oh, prevalent, if there's plenty bicycle theft and people go into court because of the prevalence of that, you could be denied bail. But that is in the Bail Act?
That is in the Bail Act.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
The thing is that it's just not one consideration. Just purely on prevalence of the offense can't alone be it to deny someone bail. It has to be a consideration of a lot of other things. You understand? So the prevalence of the offense cannot be the sole determinant of whether bail should be granted or rejected. It cannot be the sole. I don't believe so, because there's so many other considerations. There's so many other things that the magistrate has to consider, whether the individual has close social ties to society, whether his family would be affected. If he's a sole breadwinner of the family, how is his family going to be fed?
I'm speaking as obviously I'm not a criminal attorney, but that seems a strange consideration to take into account the prevalence of the offense. What bearing does that have on?
I want to know that, but I didn't know it now. It's included in the Bail Act.
I wonder if attorneys in the formation of that bill objected to that particular provision.
I'm not sure.
I rather suspect they did. It seems strange to me. But of course, I'm not a criminal practitioner, so...
I mean, all lawyers in Guyana practice almost every area. Well, for you in particular, it's civil. Right. I like all of it because every single area is so interesting to me, from defamation to criminal. And like, we're going back, you were speaking earlier about the traffic situation in Guyana and the accidents. And I just want to shed a little bit of light on that. People in Guyana are becoming a little bit more litigious. They're taking people to court more often. You've seen that because it's a faster system.
Yeah, this is a litigating society.
Yeah, we're now a litigating society, which is a good thing because that's how our jurisprudence will be built, right? And after the introduction of the civil procedure rules of 2016, it's becoming way faster to get things done in the court system. And I'm always of the opinion that when people end up in accidents, personal injury claims, people should actually file those personal injury claims. Get a good lawyer, file personal injury claims, because you're doing yourself an injustice. You got knocked down, for example. Joshua got knocked down, for example. He goes home, he goes to the hospital, he incurs a lot of expenses. Now, since we're becoming a more litigious society, I think people should take the individuals who knocked them down to court in the first place and get some sort of compensation. Sometimes, maybe they're found innocent in the magistrate's court for dangerous driving, or dangerous driving causing death, and their families are now left. Now they can sue for wrongful death. You understand? And I think as Guyanese, we should take it upon ourselves to not let an injustice pass us. I think we should use the tools that are available to us in order to get some justice for ourselves. So, and the claims in Guyana are not, the awards are not exactly large because of our jurisprudence right now. So
it's pathetic, man. When you have a sole family provides, you know, and you're gonna give the man 100,000, 200,000. A steak, the steak that you guys eat at Church Street there, that's $72,000.
I don't know about that. My friend Abdool,
no.
Joshua Abdool,
I saw Abdool coming down there. You know,
I knew it.
you know, insurance people make so much money they can't count it. You have to get a supercomputer to count that money. So
Oh boy.
you don't buy a steak for $72,000.
No.
So treat it a mushi.
No.
Even but by the way, when is the honeymoon?
Oh, I think we're saving up for next year.
Saving up?
Yeah. We went out of town for a little bit, but we're saving up for a bigger trip next year, maybe.
But it got to be a bigger trip in some exotic place. I mean, Indonesia, Brazil, not the U.S. or Canada.
No, the US or Canada, no.
No. Oh, good.
No, Canada's boring. I was born there, you know.
Oh, you were born in Canada? So you cannot be a parliamentarian then? You got to give up your citizenship.
I wouldn't have a problem doing that if I decided to become a parliamentarian. I wouldn't have a problem giving up citizenship.
I was born in
You're just named after a Canadian.
Simple as that. Unfortunately, I didn't have the life that after Joshua.
But Joshua, you're a very experienced man. You are born in Canada, worked in Trinidad. Now you're practicing in So what's the next step? Oh yes, you said the next step is insurance.
Possibly.
Insurance. So you interested in politics, Donavon?
I am. I would never say no.
I think you young people need to get into we need that generation that was there, that provided epistemological foundation from Guyana, that introduced the culture of debate, and that helped shape our political past. I think you need younger people like you need to come on the scene. I think, and the thing is, the younger and inexperienced you are, the more likelihood that you're not seasoned into conspiracies and seasoned into, backroom deals. So both of you are old. You say insurance, not politics.
Yeah, I am interested in politics, but I am very afraid of it. I think rightly so.
Well, law and politics are close. If you look at Jamaica, US, Guyana, a lot of lawyers are into politics. It's surprising to hear a lawyer say he's afraid of
I am. I think you would have genuine concerns. Anybody would have genuine concerns. I mean, if we're talking about divorce and how that's acrimonious, politics is 10 times that, I mean, but I recognize that young people do need to get involved and they need to do good, and that injection of young people would be a good thing ultimately, because I think young people are less burdened by ideologies of the past, perhaps.
I agree. Young people really needs to get into things, but the opportunities, of course, sometimes do not.
Yeah, the good thing about them is that they don't carry the baggage of the past.
Yeah.
I mean, if I call some names to you about the 70s, and although they're very famous, you would not know. So you don't have that trauma of the past that shapes how you relate and how you deal with people. I mean, what we need in this country is a PPP, PNC, WPA, ANUG, and all those people, to shake hands and meet at functions and discuss problems that they meet and they say, oh, look, a bill coming up there, man. Let's meet and discuss this bill before it go on the paper. I think you need that kind of thing in Guyana, and the people to do that. I found in my experience when I reached these young people, they're more innocent. They're more they're less endowed with the tit for tat of the past. And it'd be nice for young people to but you're mortally afraid of it. I don't blame you if you know what happened to me. How many times I almost lost my life. I don't blame you, but you don't have that fear.
No, I generally my thought about life is that you gotta try something at least once as it relates to your career. I need to experience it. And I'm not afraid of anything, to be totally honest with you, when it comes to my career. I'm not afraid. I think it's because of my training. But generally, that's how I think about life. But I understand the perspective which Joshua is coming from. I can tell you that much. There has to be something in the back of your mind, because politics is I'm not sure exactly how to describe it. I'm at loss for words about it because I don't want to cause any problems in relation to it. But generally, young, like you said, Freddie, young people need to be more involved. And Joshua needs to be more involved too. Even though he's afraid. But the fear is what keeps us human. That's what I always say.
I am fearful of people that are overly eager to get involved in politics. I'm always more assured by somebody who reluctantly accepts a post in a political position, because then you know that they're going into it for the right reasons. And that's always a consideration of mine. If you're going to go into something like politics, you must make sure you're going in for the right reasons. I have no inclination to get any sort of power whatsoever. I'm happy with where I am. Anyway, politics is a I think it's a scary and dangerous thing for many reasons. And the system is set up, unfortunately, where those who want power approach politics with that in mind, and they attempt to seize it. Anyway, I'm not to say that there's not good politicians. There's good politicians.
Yeah, they're bad and good policemen, bad and good priests, bad and good. I'm going to ask a question that lawyers don't like to answer because they defend people. But I find that you party at night, you drank a lot of liquor, and you driving down the road, and you knock someone down, and it's 16 months, 18 months. That is vehicular manslaughter. That is vehicular murder. I find the jail term for death by dangerous driving, death, it has the word death by dangerous driving. Look what goes on in this. You see, you drive these, you see, I make no apologies for saying, you see the low lives on these roads? You see what these minibus people do? Next thing you know, you lose one in your hand. I know there's been a change in the law, but that change in the law, I don't know, you have to tell me if it goes up to 10 or life for if you're convicted for death by dangerous driving. Could you get 15 years? Could you get 10 years?
I have to check back the legislation. I don't know it at the top of my head, but I believe it's 5 years, if I'm not mistaken.
I definitely agree with you that it needs to be more time.
Well, I think the idea of it is that somebody doesn't go out with the intention of killing somebody on the road. So I think that's the reason.
All right, there's no malice there, but that is a gray area. If you're going to drive a car at 140, there's no malice there. But you have to understand that car may that car will become uncontrollable. You know what? Do you know? We haven't done this. We haven't read any statistics about it. But do you know how many foolish men have lost their lives on those big motorcycles? Because we don't have the roads for that. You open up on the quarantine, and next thing you know, a farmer carrying 6 cows across the road. I live on the railway embankment. I can tell you how much times I see donkey carts and how drawn vehicles on the road. You don't have that in the US, where they have some 8-lane highways, so those guys could open up. People open up on the East Bank from the time you leave Georgetown, which is Agricola, and you reach Tamari. It's housing areas. That's no highway. Those are roads, that's housing areas. And you drive in a car at 140. Look at that death recently, that 18-year-old girl.
Yeah. All the more reason why implementing the demerit system is important. You got to get these serial offenders, because the bad drivers are serial offenders. They'll keep on reoffending and reoffending. And if you don't have a way to get them off the road, you have more and more and more deaths. But I agree with you. I feel like people should get more time, generally speaking, when they commit vehicular manslaughter, because although it's not intentional, sometimes they're so reckless. It's a reckless disregard for human life. I mean, you occupy a road, you're using it other people's lives are involved, right? I lost a dear friend.
True.
Yes. Ian McDeesey.
Oh yes, he got killed at Sandy Bab by outside the GF headquarters. Yeah, a drunken driver. Yeah.
Well, I can't speak to that because the case is going on right now.
Oh yes.
But yes.
No, that case isn't finished.
No, it's not.
Yeah, that guy allegedly ran a red light at the junction of Sandy Bab and Sugwim Singh Road, what we call Irvin Street.
Mm-hmm. So it's horrible. I mean, it's somebody I play squash with often. You know, I play squash, so, and everybody is greatly affected by it. Anyway.
So our operator said 3 minutes left.
3 minutes left.
Yeah. You want to sum up anything about the rule of law, the legal system, jurisprudence? All the time I'm doing this interview, I want to ask about the CCJ and all those election cases and no confidence thing, but I don't know if you want to go there because
3 minutes?
The CCJ.
Stage is yours.
No, not in 3 minutes.
The CCJ ruled in all those cases in the no confidence and the election thing. The ruling, I thought, embarrassed this country because of some simple things those judges said, why are they in front of us? But you're too young and you have your whole life in front of the court. You don't want to touch that, would you?
In 3 minutes, no.
No, to be honest, to be perfectly honest, I've quite lost track of those petitions. I'm not even sure what state they're in right now.
But all of them have been ruled on.
Yep.
I think the last one was the elections petition. But before we go, starting with you, Josh, those land cases that you hear people say going on 15 years now, you involved in any of that?
Actually, thankfully, no. I'm not involved in any 15-year-long land case, but I know it's all over. It's all over. There's tons of them.
Guyana?
Oh, there's tons of land cases going on forever and ever and ever. Because
no, man, they have to come to an end.
Yeah,
people need their land so they can pass it on to their children.
But you know, the land issues in particular get very complicated, and especially because it tends to marry two different. You have to deal with the state law, and people pass away, and you have to do a long chain of succession, and all these become issues in the court. And next thing you know, you're looking at documents from 1952 trying to figure things out, and it's just.
So these cases aren't going to come to an end?
They will eventually.
I think there's one with Tulsi Persaud by UG Road there. Where we got to go, but before we go, name me a past legal luminary that you respect and you'd like to be like, or you admire.
I would like to name a present legal luminary that I admire.
You don't want to go into the past.
No.
You just name anyone.
I have my...
Go on.
Senior counsel Robin Stobie.
Robin Stobie. You admire him?
Admire, definitely. I worked with him for a little bit. He's not only a great attorney and legal luminary, but he's a gentleman.
Okay. Donavon, past or present?
It has to be present. I don't know too much about the past. I never worked with them.
Right.
Having worked with people, it actually helps a lot to see what they are like. Well, I had two mentors since I started my practice. I worked with Mr. Sanjeev Dattadin, Member of Parliament, and Mr. Ganesh Hira, who's always been there for me. If I needed anything, I would pick up a phone and call Mr. Hira, and he would answer. He would give me the good advice. He would say, Donavon, this is how it is. And he breaks it down. I think he'll be embarrassed that I say that he's one of my mentors. He probably doesn't even know that. But really and truly, he's a good mentor. So Mr. Dattadin and Mr. Ganesh Hira.
I should mention, of course, before I get into trouble, Mr. Kasher Khan, great mentor. And Mr. Glenn Haneman, of course, who is a great mentor. Of course, he worked criminal strictly, and I worked civil, so I haven't had much interaction on the same cases as him.
But you mentioned two of them that I admire. I admire Sanjeev Dattadin. I think he's one of the best legal brains in this country. And I'll be forever grateful to Glenn Hanneman, who saved me from the wrath of a High Court judge named Navindra Singh by being bold and courageous and taking the case and say, I am going to put him on the stand. Joshua, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for watching us. You were looking at two very young attorneys at law. If they stay in the legal profession, they have 40 more years ahead of them. Two very bright young men with all the future in front of them. Joshua Abdool and Donavon Rangiah. Thanks for being with us. We will see you on Friday. Take care. Bye-bye. Have a pleasant Wednesday evening.